So, welcome to episode 3 of our 2019-2020 season review. Hopefully you've had a look at the 2 previous episodes. This one very much will lead on from the last one, just for the fact that it's November, but they are very viewable in their own right, I think. I'll put the video montage up that we've got for the races that are featured in this particular episode, so that will pop up hopefully in a moment. If it doesn't, because I can't get it onto YouTube, then there's a link below that will be to the Facebook page, so you can watch the video review, which helps. It's just the finishes. It's a nice little reminder. Otherwise, you can listen to us. But fingers crossed that video will go in now.
Time Hill in front, leading by 2 lengths to Champagne well in second. Time Hill and Richard Johnson have won the Ballymore Novices hurdle. The hill, All Mankind is finding plenty on the run-in. 3 or 4 lengths ahead was good money for this, and they were right. All Mankind has won. Botox has in second. Repetitio. On the side now. West approach. Robbie Power comes through to take it up. And that's a fine turn of foot at the end of 3.5 miles. West approach clears away to get to Happy Diva, but she's fending him off. Richard Patrick in the yellow and purple, and Happy Diva still in front. Braylon is trying hard in second place, but Happy Diva is still holding him. They race towards the line. Happy Diva, yes, she's done it. She gets to Golan Fortune, who's still in front by 2 lengths, and he's finding and he's holding them. Sam Lee on Golan Fortune of 1. Urban Artist leading by a length. Legends Ride in second place is trying to get to her, but it is Urban Artist staying in front, wins by a length and a half, maybe more. Legends Ride
jumped it brilliantly and is clear from Moon over Germany, and then Montpellier, who's coming again, but Notebook well continued the good work over Punchestown fences and has gone on from Pennymoor. World Classical Dreams lost his straight, and Saldier wins the Unibet. Morgiana from Stormy Ireland over will jump a fence in time with that brilliant jump at the last, and Stormy Ireland and Paultown, and as this mare sets herself up for back-to-back runnings of the Frontline Security Grable Mares stages, and Battle Over Doyen is on target for win number 2 of her fences.
It's put the kettle on, leading by 2. Second place Al Dancer. Forget the kettle, get the champagne. She's won at Cheltenham. Defy de Searle is into second place and galvanised towards the near side, trying to get past Politano, who won't lie down without a fight. Defy de Searle, though, has taken the lead with Barry Garrity and wins. Ball. Any one of the 4 could win. Monsieur Lecoq in orange to Harambe, the black cap, the grey horse nearest to us is Gumball. They run towards the line. Harambe has just got there in the centre. But it is Hang In There who's been in front most of the way, and that is where he stays at the winning line.
Finish, Footpad will return with a win of swagger.
Surname and Harry Cobton in front. Altior in second place, 4 lengths behind him, and it is Surname who gets the spoils here. Surname and Harry Cobton have made all. If the cap fits, is going to repeat last year's success in the Coral Hurdle and win.
Back in third, Stony Mountain is staying on stoutly. They've still got over half a furlong to cover. AC Milan in a slow motion finish from Ask Ben. Stony Mountain is absolutely storming home, and Tedham in the yellow is flying. Stony Mountain is coming right through to pick him off close home and draws on to take this Grade 3 prize. Stony Mountain together, lost in translation with momentum. Bristol the May fighting on tenaciously, but it's lost in translation in front halfway up the run-in. Try as he might, Bristol the May can't get back to him. Super powered, lost in translation, wins the Betfair Chase.
Easy as you like for Fury Road, and is winning here without breaking sweat, and a good start to the day for Davy Russell and Gordon Elliott.
Papagana, and she just ran them into the ground to win the feature race for Leighton Aspel. Oliver Sherwood, colours of Mr. DJ Burke.
Over the far side, Cornerstone Lad is running the race of his life. Bouvetard, Cornerstone Lad, as they come to the line, it's very close.
Black Op Champ on the far side, though, galvanised through by Barry Garrity, just gets round the elbow in front there, and it is Champ now who goes on to win by about 2 lengths. Second stages, Paisley Park in front. Thistlecrack, though, is not far behind him in second position. Running inside the last 100 yards, Paisley Park driven out towards the line. It's going to be a narrow one, but it's a victory. Paisley Park, another win. 4-length lead. Reserve Tank in Blue is trying to close it down, but the outsider of 3, a winning steeplechasing debut for Danny Whizbang and Harry Cobton. Second place next, but Epperton, she is striding away majestically on the way to the line, and Epperton and Aidan Coleman have won. Second place to French Crusader. It is on to go to Rasher Counter in front. It's coming home in second. Elegant Escape on the outside of the conditional, but it is Darasha Counter who's won the Ladbroke Trophy.
So you've either watched the video and you're up to speed with what's on there, you've skipped it, whatever it is, but we're at the point now where we're going to go through the second half of November. So just a quick little recap of what this is. I review the season every year anyway. Darryl will do it. I think most people do. We decided to get together to talk about it. This is the first time we've properly looked at the stuff that happened last term. We're trying to talk about it as we remember it at the time, as opposed to knowing what we know now. Obviously, that's a bit of a challenge in itself, but I think we're doing all right so far. And the races we're covering, we're trying to cover as much as possible that's important, but we're focusing mainly on the graded races, a few listed races, and then some selected other races. Because as much as we'd like to go through every single race, we just can't do it. So without further ado, we're going to crack on. And the way that this has been split up, we're now on to the Cheltenham November meeting. So the October meeting didn't feature in terms of the status of races that are in there. We gave it a little bit of a waffle, but the November meeting is really where it comes alive. We talk about the Chepstow season opener being like the start of the national hunt season for a lot of trainers and fans, all that sort of stuff. But for me, when we get this sort of weekend, it's monster. We've got some really good racing at Cheltenham. There's decent racing over at Punchestown. There's lots of horses coming out making their debuts. It's just mouth-watering. So I saw you at Cheltenham for I don't know how many of the days you were there, but I remember seeing you for a couple of the days. I think, Darryl, were you hospitality in?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. Time Hill won a Ballymore Novice Hurdle at this meeting. First race of the day, I think. That was I actually really fancied him for this because I didn't think Champagne Well would stay this trip for 2 mile 5, and he did all right, but he was just outstayed by Time Hill. Went off the short price 11.08, but stepped forward from that Chepstow Open meeting that we spoke about earlier. Really impressive. Really impressed with him. This is when I did start thinking about him. Once I get a little bit of course and distance experience over Cheltenham, I did really start thinking about him for the Ballymore. Then I didn't necessarily thought there was a lot of talk afterwards. I didn't necessarily think that the Albert Bartlett would be his type of race. I thought probably more of a just over 2.5 miles Ballymore would suit. Sorry about that. Someone's come to see me past. But I'm really impressed with him. Really liked the performance. Was really keen on him. Back to him at a short enough price here. I know a lot of this is going to sound like half the timing, but it is what it is. He got the job done in no style. And I was really impressed with him. All Mankind was the other horse. The other was the juvenile winner on the card, rather. That was impressive. The way he did that was really, really impressive. I wasn't overly fussed about this race. Actually, that's a lie. Mick Pastor ran him here, and we both liked Mick Pastor, didn't we, for this? We thought he was going to come over here and he was going to be some superstar, but he really disappointed. Turns out he had a breathing issue, no tongue tie on. But All Mankind was just really impressive. He sort of, he won well, but he dictated everything from the front that day. And he sort of took a breather in mid-race. So he's this type of horse that sort of just blasts off, then gets a breather and then goes again. Now, it takes a good horse to be able to do that. Yeah. But I was wary of the result afterwards. I was impressed with the way he did it, the way he managed to stick to the task and finish out his race quite strongly. But I also was a little bit wary at the time of that performance. Now, a lot of people fancied him immediately after that for the triumph. And he went to the head of the market, I think, didn't he, straight after this race?
Yeah, and I feel very similar with you on that. Like, so we were both into Mick Pastor for the race. No tongue tie. It was crap from him, to be fair. With All Mankind, I mean, I do this often with the anti-post bets as well, but I did have a bit of a saver on All Mankind just because when we were in the pre-parade ring, he just looked like he was there to be buzzed up. They backed him a bit as well, and he'd only run a little bit before that as well. I think he'd run it was at Warwick. He ran not so long before. The quick turnaround and all that sort of stuff. I think the Skeltons quite fancied him. I think they knew that he was race ready, all that sort of stuff. So I put it down to the fact that they supported him. Mick Pastor didn't run his race. Like you say, he got the breather in there. He was able to do that. So at that point, I didn't think that he was a Triumph Hurdle contender, probably in the slightest. Started to get a bit carried away after that. But yeah, it was a nice performance on the day, wasn't it? But yeah, Mick Pastor was the one that was a bit disappointing from that. There's a couple of other good races that day as well, though. A couple of handicaps, weren't there?
Yeah, a couple of good handicaps. But it's very difficult to turn around and say that those handicaps are definitely worth keeping an eye on, because they're prepped throughout the season to win races of that nature, aren't they? So it's very difficult to pinpoint anything else. But I think the two main ones were All Mankind and Time Hill to take out going forward in terms of looking at the festival later on.
Yeah, I agree. I think with some of the handicaps, though, there are runners that are in there behind. I don't want to get too caught up in talking about them races because there's quite a bit to get through. But there's lots of horses, like things like Warthog was beaten in behind and then goes on and wins later in the season. The October, November, December meetings, and then even up to like New Year's Day and the Trials Day, there is like handicap form that can be quite well seen. Horses that might finish down in a handicap in one race and then later in the season they're going to come good for it. So they're obviously races that are well worth watching. Sometimes they can pan out into like actual festival form, but I like the fact that we've got some decent graded races action on. It's good as well. I will also give a mention, because we like to big ourselves up in all of these things. Urban Artist that won the Mayor's Bumper. A friend of mine's got a horse with Noel Feely and David Cross. They were talking about that to him. So we got to meet Dave Cross and Noel Feely as we were watching the bumper. We were talking about a horse that they were potentially going to get involved with that had some okay-ish bumper form. And Nico de Boinville had actually ridden it in a bumper and got it beat. And I said, literally, as Nico de Boinville was cantering clear on this horse, that Nico de Boinville doesn't ride very many bumper winners, or I didn't think his strike rate was that good. And then Dave Cross just pointed at the screen and said, he doesn't ride very many, does he? So I felt like a bit of a prune after that. But that was the level of bumpers that it is there. It's a mare's bumper, in it. Hey ho. There was one that I fancied in that, a big price that I put up on the page. We beat the price, but didn't really do anything. West Approach, I thought, was very impressive the way that he went clear and did it. But there was some much better racing over in Ireland that day. We sat down together and watched the Novice chase when Notebook won.
Yeah.
And to be fair, up to that point with Notebook, he'd won an okay race. The form had been franked somewhat after. It started to look like he was going to be quite good, but where we've talked about it before, we don't want to get too excited about horses early in the season. I think he was still 25-1 for the Arkle. I think people had said that before that, like when he'd won in October or after that, when the form had been franked, that maybe he was a good enough horse for it. I just had a little bit of a reservation about whether it would be strong enough to be Arkle form, but there was no denying he was like seriously impressive in that Novice chase. And then obviously we know now that he went on from strength to strength after and did make himself a proper Arkle contender. But it was a pretty good performance, wasn't it? You weren't expecting it, I don't think, that day, were you?
No, I weren't expecting it, and I was blown away. I thought he was brilliant. Of course, as we know, I latched onto him after that, and he did all the right things.
Absolutely.
Apart from doing the job at the final stage. I think, obviously, we're talking a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but I think that perhaps that horse just doesn't really appreciate Cheltenham, or doesn't really like Cheltenham, maybe. But he did everything right. He won the right races on the way to the Arkle. He did everything right. Just a bit baffling, really. And he was impressive in every start, including that one.
I agree. The thing is, price-wise, what we've talked about, how we were feeling at the time. I wasn't completely convinced about him potentially turning into an Arkle prospect. Whereas you, at this point, seeing this performance, you liked the way that he jumped. You did your fence-by-fence analysis and stuff after, didn't you? I think you stuck him up for the Arkle from this 25s, was it?
Yeah.
They smashed the price out of it there. And to be honest with you, after you put it up, and I just thought, do you know what, I'll just annoy myself if I don't have a bit on. I did have a bet on him for that, more so for the fact that you'd put him up and you were that bit more taken with him. So thank you for putting me in the right direction, even though it didn't pan out. But these are the sort of things, we get to these races, you can have varying opinions on it. It doesn't mean that like you're always going to get it right, or I'm always going to get it right, or which way it is. But it is important to have a few people's opinions that you like to value, whether you've got it in your circle of friends, all those sort of things, because there's so much racing that's going on. And to find out what other people's opinions are of a race can make a massive difference. And then when you're backing horses like this at 25-1, a long way out for Cheltenham, and then they're going off at 5-2, you're doing the right sort of things. You can afford to get a couple on your team sheet for that. Also on that day was a horse that won the Morgiana. So that was a bit of a thing. It's because it was Classical Dream was supposed to be coming of time, wasn't he? There was lots of talk about Sharjah. I think was Sharjah in that race as well, and they were talking about him being potentially the one for Hurdle. Or after they were in there, weren't they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So we had all of that, and then Patty Mishwa split the lot. So we had Classical Dream. I was very much in the camp of I'm annoyed that Saudi has gone and won it, but I had backed him for the Cheltenham just because I knew that a lot of people would get excited about him. He was 33 before this race, so it was one of them. I'm happy to have a few darts at things, especially when I feel like, regardless of how he would have performed in that race, because he wasn't particularly fancied, I couldn't see his price getting any bigger after it. Then he goes and wins. I was still actually a bit annoyed because I wanted Classical Dream. I really fancied him to turn into the champion hurdler. The fact that Petit Mouchoir was in between him, I was just like, well, does that mean that Saudi wasn't quite as good? Does it mean that Classical Dream's going to come good out of it? I was still a little bit confused by it, but overall the feeling for me after that was I was just gutted with how poor Classical Dream was, because it was the low head carriage again. He did all that in his previous season. Stupid jump, didn't he? With the last, or whatever it was, where he took off like miles out from it. He looked like a horse that had never seen a race course in his life, didn't know how to run against other horses. And I know these are Grade 1 winners in there with like the likes of Sharjah, Petit Mouchoir, decent horses in there, but I don't know. It wasn't beaten too fast. It was enough for me to think I can forgive him that run, but I was definitely a bit deflated after that. What did you think of the race?
Yeah, I'm disappointed. It looked a bit like a nutcase, didn't he, that day? And it proved to be true, really. I wasn't overly convinced when he was stepping into open company about the form of the Supreme Novice Hurdle before this race. Thought 2 to 5 was short enough on him. It should never have been that price, really. But yeah, it's kind of like you wanted him to be that next really good 2-miler. I think at the time the division was really lacking any sort of superstar, and we were all looking for a champion hurdle winner. But a lot of people were right, really, to think Classical Dream did, given how he won the Supreme the year before. So it was very deflated, very disappointed. But on the other hand, on the positive side, it blew the division right open, and with Petit Mouchoir splitting the two, Saudi Air and Classical Dream, it made it a more interesting betting heat rather than anything else. So positives and negatives to take from it. There was no bet in the race at the time, but yeah, overall disappointed with Classical Dream at the time. That's
the second day, I think, of the November meeting, and then we'll move on to the third day now. So there was some decent racing in there. We did a preview before this as well, and we talked about things like the slower chase, and I told you that Defi de Sur would beat Politanog. Panned out nicely on that day. I think I read the race quite well, and I did say before that slower chase, I'm not saying that Defi de Sur is going to go and become a champion chase winner or anything like that. I just thought he'd win on that day. And my opinion after the race just stayed the same. I just thought it was Defi's race to win on those terms, and not necessarily thinking of him as a Queen Mother champion chaser at that point. But at least I got that one right. What did you make?
I actually definitely thought that. I definitely thought Politanog would win the race. I was really impressed by Defi de Sur winning the slur chase. From that moment on, I sort of left Politanog alone, and then sort of thought Defi de Sur was definitely the one to follow through for the next few races to see how he progresses. It was an impressive performance. His turn of foot was electric up that hill. Plus, he had all the back form of the course and distance form. There was just loads to like. There was very little negatives for Defi de Sur at Cheltenham this year. And it started here at the Slur Chase. Very difficult to try and take him on.
Yeah, and I think because I was fairly bullish about the fact that he would win that race. Again, it's one of those that I think maybe because I expected him to win, I probably played it down a bit more than I potentially should have. But it's just a game of opinions, isn't it? If you get them right and you sort of pat yourself on the back for getting it right, maybe you don't give the horses as much credit as thing because they've just done what you expected of them.
Yeah.
So, before we move on to the next bit, you may have noticed I've moved a little bit, but never mind, we'll continue as we were. So we were talking about Defi de Sur. I was bragging about how I knew that he would win the slower chase, but I sort of downplayed him for the rest of the season after that. There was some other nice racing that particular meeting. We saw Put the Kettle On win in the novices chase. That was where Getaway Trump was in there, Al Dancer was in there. I could give her a bit of a chance, I think, in that race. But again, after the performance, you just looked at it and just thought, well, I did. Looked at it and just, I didn't think that the Arkle winner was in there at that point. How about you?
No, I thought Getaway Trump was the one to take out of the race, coming with a really strong challenge, then absolutely nailing the fence, and then just unable to pick up again. There was no way I thought Put the Kettle On would be a Arsenal contender. Not a chance, really. I thought for sure if they was going to meet in the Arkle again, I thought for sure Getaway Trump would reverse the form. Perhaps Our Dancer, maybe not Our Dancer, but definitely Getaway Trump will reverse that form. I just couldn't. I just thought I'd put it down to it was what it was. I thought Getaway Trump made a couple of mistakes. Our Dancer is what he is. People are going to overhype anything that beats him anyway because he's a better fair hurdle winner, as they normally do. And I just thought it was a good opportunity. Connections clearly placed, put the kettle on well, and that was it. I didn't even consider putting the kettle on in the Arkle market.
No, not at this point even. I just looked at the race. We sort of wanted Getaway Trump to then go and win, didn't we?
Yeah, but then they came back over hurdles, which also made me think after that race, well, he's going back over hurdles. It's not going to be that's not the strongest of races, is it? Given that you could clearly see that without that mistake, he probably would have won that. Turns out he would have beat the Arkle winner. So it's just bit dodge.
That's it. And there was also some other good action there as well. Hanging There beat Pacify. That was an okay performance. Nichols had a horse in there. Maybe was it Echo, I think. That it looked like it was a nice enough performance from Hanging There, but I was slightly underwhelmed by the race in the end of it straight after the math. And Harambe and the Greatwood Hurdle, that was a cracking finish. There was loads of room of chances. I did have a little bit on Harambe. I backed him. I think it was the handicap. Maybe it was a handicap at Ascot before, but essentially there was a race that Harambe was going to run in. He got pulled out because the ground was too soft. Alan King said that he doesn't like the soft ground. They run him in the Greatwood Hurdle on soft ground, and he goes and wins. So it stopped me having more on him or backing him with the chance that I thought he could have. But he's just one of those horses that had some reasonable form from the previous season. I felt like that was his chance to run well. He did go and do it, but there was definitely a handful of horses there that I gave a bit of a chance to. The fact that Monsieur Lecoq ended up so close, we mentioned him in October, and the fact that Gumball ended up so close, again, we mentioned him in the October stuff, or maybe the start of November one. It just made me think that it was Harambe's won, but I didn't think it was going to be a race that's going to be full of future winners, I don't think. What did you make of the race? Think it was any good?
Nah, not even worth talking about, really.
Fair enough. In Ireland, though, there was a bit of action again at Punchestown. Like I say, it's great that Cheltenham's got stuff going on, but Punchestown has some decent races for the couple of days. So we have the Florida Pearl Novice Chase, which is often quite a good little marker or an indication of things to come in the future, isn't it? And Battle Over Doyen won there. I wasn't massively blown away with it.
I like the way he was game at the finish. I actually didn't think that this was. I thought this was competitive on the day, but he hadn't beaten much. I mean, any second now hadn't won since winning at Cheltenham for God knows how long, and he didn't do it impressively. He just sort of ground it out and just sort of stuck to the task and ploughed on. Do you know what I mean? And I thought a lot of people made a bit more of that than what it was.
Yeah.
At the time. He's obviously a useful horse, Battle Over Doyen. He's obviously got travel issues.
Yeah.
But this race is normally really good. Over the years, this race is normally a really good indicator towards Cheltenham under normal circumstances. It's one of the three you want to be really winning on the way to the RSA.
Yeah, and I think he's one of those horses that I think he's got. Like, there's certain people that like these horses, and there's certain people that don't necessarily like them. And I don't sort of like a bit Marmite, I guess. I don't think there's too much that's in between it. So like with Battle Over Doyen, I like him enough as a horse. Just with his action, people talk about that sort of stuff. And then, like you say, his travel issues when he came over here. He can go and pick up a few races over there. I just feel like as a novice, he's going to pick up like a race like this. I can't see him being a Gold Cup horse of the future or anything like that. And it's just, I've still got a season to play with him, but he just wouldn't have been on my radar as something that was going to be festival worthy or a notable novice even before it. So to be honest with you, I wasn't giving him that much time there. That's like quite a clear indication as well of how when the season gets ramped up, I end up having to be quite cutthroat with some of the horses that I'm looking at. And I'm not saying that I can't change my opinion as the season goes on. It is all about that. But sometimes you have to just concentrate on handful of horses that you like, watch the races back, and unless you're really struck by what something's done, like if you expect someone to win well and they win well, then that's it, just box ticks, move on to the next performance. There was just nothing in there that made me change my opinion that all of a sudden he's going to like Cheltenham, all of a sudden he's going to be the best staying chaser. And obviously the horse that we were both bullish about him for most of last season. You were very bullish about him about the season before, but you just have something like Champ that's already there as like an RSA horse as far as I'm concerned. Seeing something like him going to win the Florida Pearl, I would have preferred to have seen something like, or I would have been more interested if like Allaho was running in that, or Manella Inda were running in that sort of race. So for me, I'd already poo-pooed him. So there you go. That's his problem. The Big Getaway ran the bumper in Punchestown that meeting as well. That was the day before. I'm sure Forheen ran that weekend, didn't he? As far as I was concerned for Forheen, when he was doing his bits around about then, no way did I consider that he'd be competitive at Cheltenham Festival. I thought they'll pick something up over Christmas, just stay sound sort of thing. But it was potentially, again, I was thinking too longer term already about him, written him off because of his age, things like that. I was just quite one-dimensional with Forheen the whole of last season, because I probably didn't give him the credit he deserved going into the festival. But hey, just nice to see horse like that go around. And then there was the Gravel Mares Hurdle. Again, we did the preview. We talked about Stormy Island. I think she picked up that race for the second year running. We were just saying that's sort of her level, isn't it? Didn't make me think for any reason that she's any better than she was the season before, to be honest. Was that fair to say, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's spot on.
So now we move on to some real good racing. We can see the list up on the screen if I've got it big enough for anyone to see it. Footpad made his comeback, and he was one that, again, I think he was a backable price the night before, even on the day. Hacked up. I genuinely thought, and I know we've mentioned it, as I've said, with Clan de Zobra, and then I moved on to Lost in Translation. I thought Footpad's going to win the King George.
He was so impressive here, wasn't he? It was so impressive. Sometimes he is just outstanding. He really is.
That win was insane, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was insane. And this performance was right up there with that, in my opinion. It was very, very good, very easy winner. He's not beating mugs here, Balco Flow and Marla Beach. They're not mugs, and he's done it by 10 lengths very easily on the bridle. I really liked him. I've always had a few doubts about him, and I've just thought of that race going forward. I just thought, I don't know. That was a step up to 2.6 on soft ground. So you had said that's a stayers trip, stamina test there. But then he looked like he faded in the King George next time. I couldn't at that point. I couldn't. Kempton should have really suited 3 miles. On the back of that performance, Kempton should have. You could make a case for him. I don't know. I just always had little niggling doubts about him. He's been so impressive at times, but so disappointing in others. So it's not really one to rely on, even though I was really impressed.
Yeah, and that was the thing with it. Like I said, I thought that Kempton would suit him. He was a big price before that race for the King George anyway. And it's another one of those that when I fancy a horse for a race, as I say, it was a backable price for the race anyway, I thought. You can stick a bit of an anti-post bet on horses like this, take a punt on something, especially if you're betting with the bookies that have got cash outs. And if they were to get beat and they're already a 33-1 poke, they might get pushed out to 40s and you might just lose an extra 5% of your stake. If they do run well, which price-wise he was likely to do, and they run very well, the value comes down on it. But yeah, I backed him before the race for the King George. I backed him after the race for the King George because a couple of bookies still held his price up. That didn't work out too well, did it? But we had some decent action at Ascot. Well, that weekend we got Ascot, where we have the Ascot Hurdle, the 1965 chase. We have the Betfair chase that weekend.
Good weekend.
More decent racing over in Ireland as well. It starts to we already know November's starting to ramp up, but it's literally we're getting to the point where every single weekend there is a key trial race for the rest of the season. And it was even more so this year, given the 1965 chase was Surname versus Altior. Altior ran, but the ground was bad, wasn't it? And given the fact that it was over that trip, all those sort of things, I am clearly making excuses for Altior, but I sort of looked at the race and I just thought, if it wasn't built up to be the spectacle that it was supposed to be, and everyone would have been let run what he'd done, I don't think he would have run.
No, he wouldn't have run.
With all of that said, I still didn't expect that Surname would beat him. I do know that I did think that the way you beat Altior is you have to be in front of him. I know that sounds obvious, but if Altior's in front of you, you're really going to struggle to get past him because he's a beast. And Turner Ascot is probably exactly the same. So with the two of them, not that I would expect Nico de Boinville for his first time stepping up in Trip to go out in front, but Cernam being out in front, Nico never got close enough to him to ever catch him. I was obviously disappointed that Altior had been beaten. I was kind of a little bit grateful because I backed him for the champion chase. I still just thought it didn't say that. It doesn't prove that Altior doesn't stay. It just proves that on that day, Cernam was better than him. I don't know. I was obviously gutted that Altior had got beat. I didn't expect that he would. Just one of those flat ones, wasn't it? You just see a horse like Altior that appears to be a bit invincible, gets done by something like Cernam, and all of a sudden you think, hang on a minute, maybe Cernam actually is a beast.
Cernam's a beast. That Ascot over 2.5 mile, over 2 mile 5 on soft ground. That is a beast at that trip. Those are his perfect conditions.
Yeah.
Everything was in his favour. There's no way Paul Nicholls would have left anything to work on Cernam that day. He was fit as they could get him. Whereas I think it was the opposite for Altior. My initial reaction after the race was gutted, disappointed, because I'm a massive Altior fan. Gutted and disappointed. Left it 5 minutes. Thought about it, went through the race, done all what you need to do, and then you start to think of how much of a remarkable performance it was from Altior. Given this is his first time over 2 mile 5, he's on the soft ground, he's on the seasonal return, and he's up against a horse that's the highest rated in training at these precise ideal conditions. If every horse gets their ideal conditions, they're going to win a race, But I thought it was a tremendous performance. I thought he stayed fine. I thought he tired in the closing stages, and I don't think that was him not staying. I think that was lack of fitness. And I just thought it was an excellent performance. I actually thought on the back of this that they should continue up the 3 mile route. I did. I know he's great at over 2 miles. He's been outstanding over 2 miles, but this performance for me, you've got a chance here, but why not? Why not have a go? I actually backed the Gold Cup after this, which is ludicrous, really, looking back now. But it's got to be honest. I backed him up for the Gold Cup after this. Madness. But
we obviously saw that it took a lot out of him after, didn't it? Like he was blowing hard, and then that was the thing. Afterwards, we were thinking, maybe you shouldn't have run him. But that didn't really register into me of how long that might have an after effect onto him. And it apparently has proven that it did. It took a lot out of him, didn't it? And that again, that then goes back to me thinking you've got the first time you're stepping up in Trip, you're going up against. I think Cernam was the highest rated chaser in training at the point. Whether he deserved to be that rating or not, potentially could still be up for debate. But like we say, round Ascot over that trip, he probably is the best horse in training to do that. They potentially could have been somewhere easier. They could have gone with Altior. Why would you put him to the sword in his first?
It was a media hyped up thing, wasn't it? It was everything hyped up. Nicky Henderson suggested he didn't want to let people down, etc., which I just think is a load of nonsense. I think if the conditions aren't right for your horse, regardless of the situation, you don't run your horse. But that's my opinion. He wanted to do it,
And it's good as well because you are being honest about how you were at the time, because we did talk about this after. And like I say, at the beginning of the season, when I said to you about a horse that's going to blow out this season, you suggested that because Altior's stepping up, there's lots of unknowns. We didn't know for definite at that point that this was going to be the starting point, but we assumed it was going to be. But like you say, you could see how it's going to have an effect on a horse going up in Trip, the lasting effects it might have going up to the King Georgie thing. You could see why it happened, but because of what Altior is, how good a horse he is and how much we get into him, you were still gutted that he got beat in this race. It's not like you were expecting him to go and get turned over in it, but again, at the beginning of the season when you were looking at it, maybe, well, not necessarily the right way, but at the beginning of the season, you did have your big concerns about him, and I don't think anyone else did they? That's why he went off the price he did on the day. That's why Cernam drifted. And I know there were some people that fancied Cernam. I mean, I put up a whole case about why Altior would beat him, a specialist video for it the night before. Clueless, and I. Anyway, we'll move on. If the Cat Fits won the Ascot Hurdle for the second year on the row, was giving a bit of weight away. To be honest with you, it looks like a pretty decent performance. Again, because he was giving that penalty away. He only beat Cool My Lord, but it was one of them I just thought, if this horse and I never thought he would like Cheltenham, but it was that performance I actually thought, if this horse does like Cheltenham, Paisley might have something to worry about. What did you make of the race?
Didn't think it was a great performance, really. Just these sort of races, the Ascot Hurdle and all that, the Coral Hurdle, etc. They're just very same to me. I wasn't overly impressed. There's a few handicappers in there. Yeah. Roxanne is not the most straightforward and not the most reliable. No. It wasn't a race that made me go, right, if the cat fits, that's the Stayers Hurdle winner or anything. And those sort of races, that's the races that should be making you look at the Stayers Hurdle market immediately after the race.
Yeah, and because the trip that it is, that middle distance, it's not like you don't tend to have the speedy horses winning this one. You do have, like you say, the Stayers type. That's the sort of race you should be looking towards it at. But it didn't really look like a real Stayers performance, did it? The year before, when he ran so well to stay on to beat Old Guard, looked more like a Stayers Hurdle winning performance. But like I say, because of the fact that he'd done it at Aintree, gone and won it, they'd done it this time round, I felt, well, we knew that they were going to try him at Cheltenham. I thought that he did enough that day under the penalty for me to think maybe he could. But I still didn't think at that point that he'd like Cheltenham. So we're all winners, aren't we? There must have been some other stuff at Ascot that weekend in terms of novice hurdles and bumpers and stuff. We didn't mention any of the bumpers at Cheltenham that were there earlier in the season, but there was the Time Flies By, Nicky Henderson, JP McManus horse. At that point earlier in the season, he looked like an absolute beast, didn't he? There was a David Pipe horse as well. There was a good few bumper horses that I think they would have run on this weekend that they ran well. They looked like they were going to be good horses. But again, the bumper horses that are going to be winning at Cheltenham, not saying they have to run later in the season, but the Irish ones do very well. We know that. And then, although these races are quite nice, you're probably not going to be seeing them. So it's easy to get carried away with those horses. I got a bit carried away with Time Flies By after he won that first time at Cheltenham. But hey, we won't go too much into it so we can keep this to a reasonable level. And also, why talk about a bumper when you've got the Betfair Chase? Bristol De Mai at Haydock in any ground just wins, doesn't he? And then Lost in Translation cruised up to him. To have to work a bit harder than I thought he was going to have to, considering he cruised up to him. But credit where credit's due. He's beaten Bristol De Mai in his backyard. Other horses haven't been able to do it. It was enough in that performance for me to think, I mean, he clearly stays. It was a good effort, all those bits and pieces. After we talked about that Colin Parker Memorial Chase that he ran in before, and he looked like a real class horse there, and I just thought, you know what, he's ticked another box. He probably is. Obviously, we saw Surname do what he did. He looked like a potential King Georgie one, but because of how much he took out of the races, who knows? I just thought Lost in Translation now is probably going to be the likely Triple Crown contender. Yeah. He would win the King George.
Yeah, I mean, this race, I talked myself into backing Bristol De Mai. The 2 years previous, I took on Bristol De Mai, and this year I talked myself into backing him. Even though I thought Lost in Translation had loads more to come over 3 miles, I don't know why I did it. I just thought this was Bristol De Mai's ideal conditions, absolutely no excuse. Good to soft ground, absolutely no excuse. Yeah. He was beaten fair and square by Lost in Translation, and then this was when I started seriously considering Lost in Translation for the Gold Cup after this performance. It wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't an overwhelming winner, a runaway winner, but there was enough there to suggest stepping this sort of trip at Cheltenham, I thought would suit going forward. This was the moment he really cemented his position for me.
The thing with the Gold Cup picture is, I'm a big album photo fan anyway. The year that he ran in the RSA and then he fell and broke Ruby's leg and all that sort of stuff, there was something about him that I just felt like for the following season that he was better than the performance suggested he was in the RSA. I didn't get him at bigger prices for the Gold Cup other than I had one novelty anti-post bet on him, and obviously he just won his one feeder race into it. But I was still last season, I still was looking at Lost in Translation thinking he could go and do it, but I wasn't convinced that the British stayers, despite the ratings looking quite good, were maybe as good as the Irish lot were. But after this Betfair Chase performance, I thought he's got the speed to win at Kempton, so he's bound to win the King George. And I thought after this, because of how he rallied against Bristol De Mai, I thought he would definitely stay the Gold Cup trip. But we obviously know what happened when he went King George after, which we'll come to for the next month. Stony Mountain won the handicap hurdle, staying on from a long way back. Lots of people get excited about that sort of thing because I think Paisley Park won that the year prior. But you know, it's a Grade 3 handicap hurdle. It was
impressive, though.
Yeah,
I thought it was really impressive performance. I thought after that day he was better than a handicapper for sure.
Yeah,
I really did.
There was a few horses in behind as well. I think Tedden might have been in behind. There was a few in behind that had a bit of a rough ride of it. I think Stony Mountain actually cut one of the horses up that I backed. Shows how good my memory is. I can't remember which one it was, but it looked like there could have been a few horses to take out the race. Whether it was Ask Ben, maybe got a little bit of trouble, but anyway, it was a nice enough performance, wasn't it? But I still just pitched it as it was just a bit of a handicap. Like I said, I'm a snob when it comes to it, aren't I?
Yeah, a little bit.
Speaking of being a snob, we can move on to the Monksfield Novice Hurdle at Navan over 2 mile 4. It's a Grade 3. It can be quite a good race, this Monksfield. But if memory serves me right, the boy that I love, 6 Shooter, was entered in this. The boy 6 Shooter should have run in this because he runs over 2.5. Gigginstown had all the runners in the world, didn't they? Ended up in this, and then they just pulled everything out, and it ended up being a 4-runner race, and this horse was sent off at 1 to 25. So what did we learn? Nothing.
I thought this horse has been over bet at 1 to 25, but I just thought, Christ, people are loving this horse far too much. He's been beaten absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I know.
He impressed me at the festival later in the year, but I thought after this performance, I thought, Christ's sake, he's just going to shorten in the anti. I think he did shorten in the anti-post mark after this one. And I just thought, what is wrong with people? Why are you? He's beaten absolutely nothing.
And that is just the way that it is, isn't it? Something gets like there, it's 1 to 25. Before it even runs in the race, you class that it's already won the race, didn't you? It gets beat. Sorry, it goes and wins, and the bookie's still shorting out anti-post. It's nuts, isn't it? But I still do like Fury Road. I thought he was a nice horse. Again, that 6 Shooter bumper from the previous season. Fury Road was in there. The Big Getaway was in there. Obviously, 6 Shooter. Soviet Pimpernel Form 9 nearly works at Cheltenham earlier on in the season. We didn't mention that in the Masterson's hurdle, but hey ho. I think Fury Road at that point, it was, like I say, he was a given to win the race. I still did look at him. I'd backed him anti-post for the Albert Bartlett already. I did still think, what, fair play, box tick's gone in there, but we're not going to learn anything until later on. So not really much more we could say about it. I'm not fussed about the Kempton's mare hurdle that Papa got, but she.
Let's get on to the boy. Let's get on to the boy.
Paisley Park, yeah. So this Newbury Ladbroke Chase meeting is. Like, I think it's one of the best meetings of the whole National Hunt season. There's just so much depth. It's not even just about the Hennessy. It's not just about some other horses that are in there. There's loads of decent stuff in there. One that doesn't pick up on the bottom of my screen at the moment is the future champion hurdle winner, so we'll come on to her in a little bit. But Champ in that Berkshire Novices Chase, if you watch the clip of the highlights, then you'll see it. If not, there's a link. You can click it again. If not, just go back and find this individual race. Champ was...
unbelievable.
He was very good.
Unbelievable in this race.
Before you get too excited about this one, because it was just a Class 3 chase that he won at the beginning of November, I think it's worth going. You go back. You tell me how you thought he was on debut, and then how he was off this. You tell me how you were feeling, because we knew at the beginning of the season you were big on him for the RSA. You love the boy. You future Gold Cup winner, all that jazz. What did you think of his first debut at Newbury, beginning of November then?
At the beginning of November, I thought it was satisfactory.
But I will say, when you're saying that, I thought it was very good. I thought people were being overcritical of it, but I know how much you love this horse, and you just want everything to be right for him, didn't you? So it's like a parent with their kid. It's tough love, all that sort of stuff, isn't it? So I'm not saying you were wrong to be overcritical about him, because I think you were probably spot on. I was just giving him a bit more, maybe credit than he did.
If I'm being 100% honest, I was more impressed with the second than I was the first. I think Dashel Drash is a useful horse.
I agree.
Yeah, and I was I love the way chat on Newbury at the beginning of the month. I love the way he just quick and clear after the last. It was impressive. So, but there was never any doubt he had the ability, the stamina, the speed, anything like that. It was always going to be, how the hell is he going to jump a fence? Because he wasn't the best hurdler, you know, at speed. So I took the second out of that first race. But then, you know, I wanted Champ to be better next time, and he wasn't great. He wasn't great jumping round next time at Newbury on the Ladbrokes weekend. He wasn't fantastic. It didn't look natural. Just didn't look like a natural for him. And he was stumbling. He got in too tight. He clipped the top of fences. You know, I didn't think, to be honest, I didn't think Barry was giving him the best of rides. And I was vocal about giving Barry some shit for it. But look, the way he picked up after the last at Newbury and pulled him inside the running rail, the agility he showed after running 2.5 miles, and the speed and agility he showed being pulled back onto the track.
It was filthy, wasn't it?
It was unbelievable.
And I think, well, all the people, because I think, like I say, when I fancy a horse to win a race, and like I say, like Ballyoshine's a bad example, but when I fancy something like Ballyosine to win and it goes and wins by that distance, I knew, I was so cocky, I knew it was going to win like that. Same as like with Defi de Saul. As far as my opinion was concerned, I knew that was going to happen, so I wouldn't be necessarily as excited. Same with that Newbury thing there with Champ, and it's like you were spot on with it. You're a bit more critical because you want more from him, didn't you? Because you know how good he potentially could be.
I want to put so much money on this horse. I want to put it on, and I want to know that if I'm putting that much money on this horse, that I'm not making a silly mistake where I'm going with my heart rather than my head.
Oh yeah, no, I get it. But it's such a good thing, and this is where again it's so important that like there'll be people that will just just follow you. There'll be people that maybe just follow me. But this is where it's so important to get other people's opinions and stuff. And the more you listen to what people are saying, the more you read their writing and stuff, the more you can understand why they're saying things. So, for example, after that race, I was impressed with him. Job done. Wins the RSA as far as I'm still concerned. You didn't think he wasn't going to win the RSA off the back of it, but you were just thinking, right, I still want to see a bit more from him, which is what you did. If they just take like individual comments, it would sound like at that point I was more bullish than you for him to win the RSA, when in fact I don't think I was. We both thought he was going to win the RSA, wouldn't we? Like I say, just expecting that performance. Then what he did in that one after, I was like, this is filth. This horse just weaving off and doing it. But you are completely right. His jumping still wasn't that great. To actually go and win an RSA, he still needed a little bit more about it. You were right to have those bits of reservations, but we all know how it all panned out. We don't need to get too far into it, but it was filth, wasn't it? You see horses do this, regardless of who they beat. To have that turn of foot that close to the line it's filth. You know they're a beast.
Exactly, and the fact that he beat, I think it was underrated that he beat Blackhawk. Like Blackhawk, I've got an issue with Blackhawk's jumping. I don't think when he's at speed, he clips top fences. He's not going to win any big races, but he still is a solid 152 rated horse. Yeah. And for Champ to be able to do that to a solid 152 rated horse after the last, you know, when he's made so many mistakes, was quite remarkable, really. And I think he got underplayed a little bit, the value of the form, really.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. But it was a really exciting meeting, a really exciting day to see stuff, and it was good to see it. He's obviously still going to have his critics. He's one of those types of horses, but hey ho, the boy did it. We've dwelled on it. Now Paisley Park was out. Thistlecrack ran against him as well. I love a gloat, didn't I? I had the pick six up the win six up at Newbury this weekend. There were some good races in there. There was other handicaps, bits and pieces. What's that? Love and after time, yeah. We said no. I put the post up. People can join the syndicate if they want. That's the beauty of the Colossus stuff, innit? People could buy in, but it didn't even fill up. But I had it solo. Anywho, Paisley Park was the last leg of it. I'll be brutally honest, I did cash out before the Paisley Park race because I'd already backed Paisley Park. I had the win six going on it. They were offering me a reasonable cash out in terms of what his current price was, stuff like that. I cashed out and I feel gutted after because obviously he went and won. But there was a couple of points towards the end where Thistlecrack was making me worried. But because it was Thistlecrack, regardless of how old he is, I think that was solid form. And as far as I was concerned, Paisley Park, job done. Going to go and win the Stayers Hurdle again. It's just completely...
I agree. Thistlecrack ran a blinder there. What a horse!
Absolutely. If only they hadn't sent him chasing. Like, I know they've gone and sent him chasing, and he's gone and won a King George as a novice. So fair play. They probably consider that's as good as it, innit? But imagine they'd have kept him over hurdles, and then we could have seen more Paisley Park Thistlecrack crashes, or Thistlecrack could have then doing more what Big Bucks are doing, going and win them.
I
debate for another day, innit?
Just for the sake of conversation, I think Thistlecrack in his prime much better than Paisley Park.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would probably. I love Big Bucks, but I would think if I'm looking at staying hurdlers that we've seen recently, I would think that Thistlecrack would have had a chance of doing Big Bucks just because he's so gutsy.
Yeah, I love that horse.
So we've bombed Thistlecrack a bit too much. My mate Don's probably still wearing the Thistlecrack scarf, even though it's 35 degrees outside. But it was a decent performance from Paisley Park. Did what he needed to do. Now, when we move on to the big day, the Saturday of the meeting, we saw the fighting fifth hurdle. Cornerstone Lad won. The race was marred by the fact that Bouverdere not only was beat, but had a whole fence panel hanging out of his foot, didn't he? It was good to see there was an excuse, I thought. Obviously gutting that he got beat, but I didn't at any point think that Cornerstone Lad's a champion hurdle winner off that. It's just Bouverdere lost the race. That was it, wasn't it?
Christ, yeah. A lot of people after this started tipping up Cornerstone Lad for the champion hurdle. What the base of what? One heavy ground win at Newcastle, like beating three. Like it was a good performance from him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a good performance, but Christ, he's nowhere near the level for that.
I wonder if with lots of stuff with that, whether, because I know it was mentioned like fairly soon after that Bouverdere had the splinter in his foot. I still wonder whether people, they watch the race, they see the result, whether some of these people that were putting up even knew that happened. They were still tipping it, probably didn't even know that Bouverdere wasn't right. Because if you knew that Bouverdere had that wrong with it, then you have to just say, all right, fair play, Cornerstone Lad still beat him, but if the horse has
got a shed hanging out of his leg.
Exactly. So yeah, it was one of them.
So that's what almost
like sorry, I was just going to say, it's almost like a where were you moment when Bouverdere got beat by Cornerstone Lad. It was like an instant victory, I think, for Cornerstone Lad more than anything, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think people you really, really need to look at the conditions horses are running in. I mean, you cannot fancy like heavy ground at Newcastle or Haydock. It's completely different to a good to soft race or just turning soft or dry and soft at Cheltenham. It's not. It's completely different. I just couldn't believe, like, people jumped as soon as he beat him. A lot of people jumped on the anti-post and backed him at 66-1 or whatever it was, 100-1. I just thought things like that. You can't run. You've got to analyse it. You can't just take it for face value. Like, there was an excuse there for Bouverdere. Look, you see how easily he cruised up that day on him. It would have left him for dead. And Silver Streak doesn't like heavy ground, and Lady Buttons is not at the level of a Silver Streak. Yeah.
You're definitely anti that race, wouldn't you? I like the passion. But it was a good day all round for other stuff, right? The Ladbroke Trophy dwindled into a bit of an abyss of lots of possible, likeable horses. Hard to put your finger on many of them. I actually am not ashamed. Well, probably should be ashamed. I'm not ashamed to say that I think I had 8 horses I backed anti-post to the Ladbroke Trophy. It's obscene, isn't it? But I got to the point where there was a few that I liked. I backed lots of them all at bigger prices. I did end up making a profit because the Rash account was one of the ones that was in there. So it was on the short list, but I didn't have the conditional that ran well in there as well. It was a good performance of the Rash account. In hindsight, I should have had more on him because he had some Newbury form. He was off a reasonable mark, all those bits and pieces. But hey, how I didn't. I feel like that's it. Rash account has had his moment. I know the conditioner went on and did well at Cheltenham after, but I didn't really look at the race and think this is going to be red hot fire form for the rest of the season. I just thought Rash account was one on the day, move on.
It's got a good roll of honour, that race, though.
Hell of a good roll of honour. And that's looking forward to this season. I'll do some pieces about horses for anti-post towards the Ladbroke Trophy, just because if you want to back 8 horses like I did and then claim it as a victory, like a clown, then I can teach you how to do that. But this season, I only need 1 ticket, and the horse won the same day, and the horse is Danny Whizbang. Danny Whizbang was, I like this horse anyway. I was impressed with his victory. Let's not forget, that it was a small field, and we've already, when we watched back the previous episodes, or anyone else has watched that, we're digging out some of the other horses the horse that he beat, Reserve Tank, aren't we? So we're already saying there's question marks about Reserve Tank. Danny Whizbang goes and beats him fair and square, but again, we've already said there's those potential alarm bells in there that Reserve Tank might not be as good as he is. So maybe I shouldn't have taken it as literally. But Harry Cobton, when he was going up the chute back to the parade ring, I like to ask him about these sorts of horses because it looked like Danny Whizbang had a bit of condition. Just asked him, like, this horse is going to improve a ton for the run in it, and he said, "Oh, definitely." Like, he was adamant that he needed the run that day, and then he's gone and won the race. So I got all excited and thought this horse is going to win the Cheltenham, the Cheltenham Star Novices Chase at Cheltenham, and started backing him in that. Obviously, that didn't particularly pan out, but because we were talking about Ladbroke Trophy, I know we're supposed to be focusing on how it was last season, but Danny Whizbang, at that point, I thought he's going to win the Cheltenham, going to go and potentially go and win an RSA or something ridiculous like that. And then the plan B is, if it doesn't work out, Paul Nicholls in the Ladbroke Trophy, a second season novice, Danny Whizbang fits the bill. So Danny Whizbang will win the Hennessy.
Do you reckon he's ground dependent or not?
I don't think so. I think he's just a bit of a baby, and he's a big old horse as well. And I think when you get these horses that are like enormous, I don't know whether they struggle to coordinate or whatever it is, but I think he'll be fine as time goes on. I think he'll be okay. I wouldn't be worried about him on ground or anything like that. I think he's okay, but I mean, that's obviously still yet to be proven, isn't it? Because it was soft ground the two times he's been beat after, but he got battered in the Cheltenham, didn't he? There was a horse that fell, all bits and pieces like that. So I don't know. I wouldn't take that one necessarily literally.
He's got one of those marks though, isn't he? Around one, he's got a mark of 145. I mean,
ideal, isn't it?
But would you want to save that for Cheltenham, or would you want to use that during the season? Do you know what I mean?
Well, he's the thing is, because he's a course, and it's not distance, but he's a course winner, and obviously it's that time of year. I think he's spot on for it. I'm really sweet on him. 25 you can get anti-post. He's not even priced with every single bookie. Look, at the end of the day, it's an anti-post punt in it. Nicholls is going to have a career of horses going to go. They're top of the game, will be well fancied, all bits and pieces like that. But I can't see why they would not run Danny Whizbang there unless he was injured. I think he's better than 145. He'll definitely do for me. And the thing is, well, that was 3 miles. The further he goes, the better he looks. Now, we need to find out with Reserve Tank whether he stays that far and bits and pieces like that. And like I say, we poo-pooed him a little bit. But, yeah, you can tell I was impressed with Danny Whizbang. But, again,
if he doesn't, he'll go for the ultimate, won't he?
What's that?
If he doesn't, he'll go for the ultimate, won't he?
That's it. He'll end up being a give me a copper. He'll be a horse that I'm adamant's going to win a race, and I'll keep backing him. And then when he turns 10, he'll win the Badger Beers Trophy at Wincanton.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Paul Nicholls told me he'd win that later on in life. Southfield Harvest.
Yes.
I love this horse, right? Southfield Harvest, he's quite a decent horse, right? He told me, I was speaking to him in the play ring, and I said, I'll tell you what, Paul, I said, that's some run from Southfield Harvest, because I backed a horse, he got beaten to second, and I backed a horse against him. And he went, that was it was on debut, hurdle debut. I think it was hurdle debut at Wincanton. I'm not quite sure. I'll have to double check with you, and I'll let you know. But he said this horse will win a Badger House.
Beautiful. So we've got that one penciled up then. So we put that in our anti-post tip, whatever year he's going to go for.
That's a couple of years away yet, though.
But that's the thing with these sort of stuff. This is why I like someone like Paul Nicholls, and I like all those bits and pieces. That like the beauty of National Hunt Racing. I know it's the same on flat as well. There's certain targets you go for. But you can see how it all pans out. Like, he's gone for this 3-mile novice chase at Newbury. You knew he was going to go to Cheltenham for the Cheltenham Star. Obviously, that out. Like I say, I can't see why he wouldn't be thinking about the Ladbroke Trophy with him. He could happily have a few runners in there. I like Danny Whizbang, but I've said way too much. Another horse that someone else likes ran on this day. We were all on her because she was absolutely going to bolt up, wouldn't she? But Epitant wins the Jerry Fielden handicap hurdle. As far as I was concerned, she's beaten a couple of other Nicky Henderson mares. She's won a handicap. I wash my hands with her. She's won the handicap. I've made my money off her this season. That's the last chance I was going to get any money on her. What did you make after the race? Be honest, Daryl. Don't hide away from it.
Love her, Dave. Love her.
You did say after this race, because I asked you asked how I got on in the meeting, and I said about some other stuff because I was there. You were asking about a couple of horses, and I said, "What did you think of Epatante?" And you literally said she'll win the Champion Hurdle after that, didn't you?
Yeah, I didn't want to brag, but yeah, I did. She's just, you don't see horses that jump. She is very, I've said it so many times, but like Boo there when she jumps hurdles, and she's just got an electric turn of foot. It's just ridiculous.
She's good.
She is very, very good. And like, she's beaten French Crusader there, like, very easily by 6 lengths. I know it was his first run for a long time, but he's a useful horse going forward. Keeping an eye on him.
Could have won by a lot further as well, I think. When you watch the replay part of it, I don't know how far in I've got of it there, but like it looks like, knowing what we know now, you think, why isn't she quick and why hasn't she gone further clear? But then when she gets like a couple of 100 yards from the line, she could have won by any level, couldn't she? It's those meetings, Nicky Henderson, JP McManus, they have a handicap at Newbury that start of the season. You know it's one of their better horses going there to win, unless obviously they get beat and you know they're setting up for a punt somewhere else. But yeah, I thought that was it. She won that day, and that's she'll get found out in better company. But hey ho, that does wrap up episode 3. That's November. Good. We've got a bumper lot for December. December is where it just gets filthy. You can see why people get stressed and busy this time of year. Anything else you want to add for the November-y bit?
No. I think we've covered loads, haven't we?
We've done plenty there, yeah. So I'll get this put up. The video, if the horse stuff was allowed to go on YouTube, will have been in there. You can go back and watch them. There'll be a link on the Facebook page to see it. And then we'll get on with the rest of the review. We're going to got 2 parts in December. We've got 1 for January, 2 in February, and then we've got the festival as a whole. So thanks if you continue to watch this. Any comment, feedback's always greatly appreciated. And I thank